He's out of sight. For real. Sammy Jacobs is into ghosts and science fiction. Not exactly the smartest hobby. At least not if you ask Sammy's parents. They're real scientists and only believe in real science. But now Sammy's met someone who's totally unreal. He's hanging out in Sammy's room and eating his cereal at breakfast. Sammy's gotta find a way to get rid of his new friend. Only problem is, Sammy's new friend is invisible.
Hello and welcome back to Goosebumps Overviews, the show where we talk about Goosebump books and judge them on their merit. Tonight's episode is another forgotten book. One of the more forgotten books in the series. Kind of one of those books where if you mention, you probably would go, oh, yeah, that one. This is book number 57. My Best Friend is Invisible. Just look at that craftsmanship, oh boy. So when going into this book, I didn't really remember much about it except the ending. That is something that kind of stuck with me. But for the rest of it, I didn't remember if it was a ghost story or an Invisible Man story. And it's kind of both, in a way. But really, it's Invisible Man territory for real here. And you know what? Since we've dealt with so many damn ghost stories, this is a welcome change of pace. But without further ado, let's get into the cover of My Best Friend is Invisible and see how things go. Okay, Jacobus. What is this? Why is this the cover? Why? This is hilarious. Goosebump covers aren't supposed to be hilarious. Look at the cat. This is a cartoon. It's like I'm watching a stupid cartoon. Oh my god. I'll give you credit where credit's due. This at the very least happens within the book, where the Invisible Man, the boy man, no, just boy, where the Invisible Boy eats a pizza. And there is a cat in this story too, which that's good, I guess. But I don't think the cat ever does that. Where's the part in this book where the cat turns into a cartoon character? Overall, this is not a scary cover. This is a goofy cover. Not as goofy as, let's say, Chicken, but still pretty goofy. But at least there's no dramatically timed lightning, because God knows Jacobus adds that in there when he can't think of anything else to make this scary. I will add one final fact before we move on. This kind of reminds me of the cover from Egg Monsters from Mars, mainly because it's the same style of kitchen, except it's less red and more pink. So it kind of changed up in that method. Meet Sammy. Sammy is the forgotten child of the family. Sammy's first lines include him wishing that he was invisible, and that's mainly his character. He's kind of a klutz. People don't really like him. His family constantly makes fun of him. He's just kind of... people just don't pay attention to him that much. So you kind of feel this sympathy for Sammy. A little bit. He's kind of a nerd. And his parents are scientists, and they constantly make fun of him for indulging in science fiction. Boy, that won't scar your child for life.
Stop laughing. It will scar him for life. It is kind of infectious.
So besides the fact that they pretty much ignore him constantly, the only time they seem to pay attention to him is just to make fun of him. And on top of that, he has a younger brother that's like Sammy 2.0, that's way better than him, and he's feeling a little jealousy there. But besides that, that's Sammy's character. It's really forgettable, but hey, this is a Goosebumps book. We're not exactly looking into memorable characters. Except maybe Sarah from the last book. She was somewhat memorable, but less likable than Sammy. Less empathizable. if that's even a word. So Sammy and his friend Roxanne are involved in this English project together where they're supposed to, come up with something random. It's just like an English science project type of thing. And Roxanne comes up with the idea of investigating this haunted house, which Sammy is a bit hesitant for. Now, this event, which you may think might start the plot of this story, okay, he goes to a haunted house and he gets haunted by a ghost. No. Pretty much right off the bat, he starts noticing some strange things, like his lunch being eaten, he randomly tripping over things, doors opening and closing. It kind of gives off that hint of a ghost being involved, but this just kind of happens out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, Sammy is introduced to Brent. Brent is an invisible boy that is constantly kind of pranking Sammy, but eventually he just wants to be Sammy's friend. That's it. That's the plot of this book. An invisible boy wants to be friends with Sammy. And I guess that's kind of interesting. But Brent is a little he's a little antisocial, I guess. He has the traits of antisocial personality disorder, where he doesn't really understand a lot of things. He wants to help Sammy, but whenever he tries to help Sammy, he ends up messing things up a bit. To the verge where it's like the story kind of takes the place of Casper, the slightly psychotic ghost, which is kind of interesting, actually. But the book never really goes anywhere with it too much. I wish Brent did more psychotic things in this. He only does a few things, and honestly, the few things he does doesn't really set off warning bells in my mind, at least. But Sammy is just like, he's had enough after like 2 things that mildly disrupted his life. And yeah, Sammy gets made fun of a lot of in this book, and that's mostly for his claims of seeing an invisible guy or having an invisible friend in his room. He blames Brent for all this teasing, but really that's Sammy's fault for thinking anyone would believe him. So that's kind of mildly infuriating. And it's also kind of mildly infuriating that Brent does not take the hint at all, which causes a lot of the conflict. And this book isn't really memorable, which is what I was thinking while reading this, until I got to the ending. Jesus, this is the most absurd, memorable ending in Goosebumps history. M. Night Shyamalan, eat your heart out. This is quite the twist. But it's kind of goofy and random, in a sense. I think at the beginning it's slightly hinted at, but comes completely out of left field. But still, I kind of like it. It is kind of interesting because, note, the characters are never really described in this story. So, props for that, I guess. Never really noticed that. So, hey. A+ ending, meh book. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into spoilers territory. So, turns out Brent is a human. Wait a minute. Yeah, since Sammy's parents are scientists, they have this molecular flashlight type of thing that reveals things that are mainly invisible. But, so, since Sammy can't seem to convince anybody that his invisible friend exists, he steals this molecular flashlight, shines it on Brent, showing that he's human. That's right, guys. If Brent's human, what does that make Sammy? Aliens. That's right. Everyone in this book is an alien. Pretty absurdly sounding aliens. And that caught me completely off guard. I did not expect that. So, props for that, I guess. That was... Jesus, man, I did not expect that. How many times I'm going to say this? That was surprising. Kind of silly, but surprising. And the book ends with Sammy's parents saying they're going to take Brent to a zoo because humans are endangered species now. Whoa-ho-ho. I heard a theory about this book, which is kind of interesting. Some people have been saying that this may be a secret sequel to Camp Nightmare. Because if you remember Camp Nightmare, spoilers for Camp Nightmare, by the way, that book ended with everyone also being aliens and they were going to investigate Earth. So the theory is that, mind you, this isn't my theory, this is something I heard elsewhere, but the theory is that perhaps maybe the people from Camp Nightmare invaded Earth, are living there now, and have taken it over completely. And this is like 10 or 20 years later after the invasion of Earth from the people in Camp Nightmare. Which, I kind of like that theory in a sense, even though the ending to Camp Nightmare for me was a huge disappointment. But, yeah, this is a great theory. I would like to... be cool if this could be bridged by Stein in some way. But that's probably never going to happen. We never get the sequels we want. Instead we get stuff like Monster Blood 4 or, well, just wait for next episode and you'll see. So for this book, I'm going to have to give this a 6 out of 10 just for the ending alone. If the ending wasn't what it was, this would probably be a 5, because it's not extremely memorable in that sense. It's kind of memorable in the sense that Egg Monsters from Mars was memorable. However, this episode did get an adaptation, which I feel like kind of does it a little bit better in some senses, since Brent basically just arrives for no explained reason. He just kind of comes out of the blue, whereas in the episode, it's somewhat explained. Anyway, guys, that has been my review on My Best Friend is Invisible. I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to stay tuned for next episode when we cover book number 58, Deep Trouble 2? Huh. This is about as baffling as the Haunted Mask 2. Maybe even more so. Have a scary day.